Welcome, adventurers. I'm GM Goblin, your GM Goblin, and today we're going to take a quick look at armor. Now, I know, it's not the most dramatic, it's not the most flashy thing, unless you're wearing plate, that people like to cover. But the truth of the matter is, there's a lot of people, a lot of players especially, that don't use their armor optimally. Mostly, they're stuck with either the same kinds of armor, or more importantly, they don't look at special materials for armor. So I'm going to take a quick look today at armor and a couple things we can look at to try and improve our characters a little more efficiently and monetarily, so we're not spending a whole bunch of gold going back on whatever our decisions are. So stick around, remember to like and subscribe, and let's get going. Now, if you've ever looked at D20 PFSRD, the armor section under equipment, you're going to notice that they have everything listed. And there is a lot of things that in general you probably don't need to pay attention to, or at least not much attention to. There's going to be a lot of armors that you won't use either because there's something better or they were specific either for a setting or a race, and so they don't get used much. Or you might use them if you're playing something special, like say a druid, and you need full plate and dragon hide is not available. But armor table is real simple. You've got your weight, your speed. Light armor keeps your speed. You drop down with medium armor and heavy armors. You have all of your normal ones that you see everyone getting. Padded used to be the big win, but not as much as the additions came over. You're looking at Haramaki, which is something if you're doing massive decks and you're going super high levels, it might be something that you transition into. And it is only going to be because your maximum dex bonus is astronomical. You're only going to be doing this if your dex bonus is going to be something like 9. And you're looking at higher levels than that. It's the only time it really plays in. It's a little bit better than nothing, but at that point, maybe you want to, if you can, look at something else. Maybe some armored bracers or something like that. If you can do the slot, it's going to allow you to increase your AC. Armored bracers, if you don't know, kind of what you would use for like monk, or what you would use for different classes that are not allowed to wear armor. You think of it as what you're able to do for a wizard. And it is basically something that you can add the special abilities for armors on, like determination, expeditious retreat, and things, but you don't have any natural armor bonus. So really the only time you use this is if you're running a character with no armor proficiencies, or for some other reason you can't wear armor. Otherwise, I would just wear something like a Haramaki. You could go to something else that you prefer, just depends. Leather armor is good. It's not going to give you any armor check penalty. It's got a max dex of 6. I think that was one of the characters who used that in my last campaign. Then he switched to a Haramaki for the +1 eventually. But at this point, his character's having a +1. So the only time you'd really use bracers of armor is going to be if you can't get away with any armor. But as I'm going to go over real quick, there are some penalties or some materials that you can use that will make not having certain armor proficiency levels a little bit easier, and give you an idea of how to add AC to your character, even if you can't legally wear something like a shield. But as most of us seen, we all know about chain shirts, and everyone uses lamellar and leather and hide whenever they first start out. One thing that a lot of people don't look at, we use this in my last big campaign, but she only used it for a little bit. She did not have access to be able to increase her armor, and she had access to, she was playing a Magus, and she started being able to wear medium armor. So what she did to save on money at the time was she threw on an armored kilt. This increased her armor's technical level to medium armor, which does decrease it, unless of course you're wearing something like mithril or darkleaf, which we'll cover here in a second. Well, mithril mostly. But which counterbalances it. But it is something that is very rarely used. I think it comes from 3.5, if I remember. And the armored kilt is just a way to add a +1 bonus. It has a high dex because all it is adding a piece of armor to it. It's part of this piece armor idea that they did in, as we can see down here, Adventurer's Armor 2010. But it's not used that much. It's not great if you have access to an actual market. But if you need something momentarily, it's not bad to be able to slip it on. Now, most of the time when you get into medium armors, everyone's going to be looking at either lamellar steel, or they're looking at, more importantly, almost always, breastplate. And breastplate of agile if you want it. But breastplate is kind of the go-to. Scale is kind of that entry-level spot. When you're level 1, level 2, you get scale armor if you can. You'll see everyone get it. It's on a lot of the art. But most people move to breastplate if they're stuck in medium armor. So if you're going to have a high dex, like a couple of our characters in our current campaign, I do recommend you looking at these two sets of armor. One of them is going to be the Domaru. Domaru being medium armor, it is 5-4 to start off with. And these characters were not worrying about the spell failure. But if you look up the history of Domaru, it doesn't specifically list the material. So it's lamellar, lacks a solid breastplate. You look this up, and you will find kinds of Domaru armor, Japanese in origin, that were made of all sorts of things. Leather, important. Metal, silk, most common. So you could say it was used in a couple different materials to get away with one of the things I did with my current character. But Domaru is something that's not always picked. And then if you want a metal option, Kiko is another great alternative. Now, all of these armor sets, you should balance between whatever your dexterity is now, so your max dex that you're going to be able to add to the armor, as well as what you see within the next level or two, at least. Because if you're changing your armor out every level, you're going to lose a lot of money. So plan ahead. Even if it means for one level or two, you're down in AC, that's fine. You need to optimize getting to that point. Kiko armor is another example that another character used in our game, where she's doing a dexish build as well as mine, and she is using mithril Kiko armor for the bonus. So she's getting around going into something like celestial armor, which is a special magical armor. It is a special magic chainmail, which everyone loves. And there's a good reason. It's some of the best armor there is. But the problem is, at her level, she's not going to be able to afford that for a long time. Chainmail down here, 6+2. But I'll get back with the Kiko in a second. And then heavy armors. Most people, if you go heavy armor, you might have someone that wants to do half plate or something. But generally, if you go heavy armor, you're going full plate. You're probably not going to be a dex build character, and you're going to go full plate. Yeah, you're going to be getting that huge armor check penalty, unless you're getting something like mithril to try and throw that down a little bit. A lot of tanks will do that. That way it helps with their any dex checks that they have. But still, it's great. Another thing to think about is your max dex is not in effect at all times. Now, which means if you had to put into normal attacks that attack your normal AC, then start of combat round, being surprised, yeah, it's better to have a higher standard armor, because you're going to lose your dex when you start, unless you have ability that says otherwise. This also gets effect whenever you're under certain abilities. When you're stunned, you can't move, things like that. Your dexterity goes out the window, and you have to depend on your deflection and actual armor class. The only problem is that your dex also affects things like touch attacks. So you can get by ghost, you can get by certain magical attacks, otherwise, Magus we talked about. Then it's a little bit different. So you, like I said, it's a way back and forth of what your character needs and the kind of combat your character is going to be encountering. And then you also have to think, as you get heavier In this, even if you have a higher dex and you're just not using that dex, or you're waiting to get mithril plate because you're running like in this game, a polearm fighter that uses a lot of attacks of opportunity. But you have to weigh that also if you're going to need against your armor check penalty. That's why a lot of people, as soon as you get into heavy, you're going to be using full plate, and you're probably going to be using mithril. The only difference is I have a druid right now in one of my games that instead of using stone plate, which is one of the very few options for him, which is basically full plate, it's just a little worse because it makes him slower, heavier. But instead of using stone plate, thankfully I had someone spot me the cache at the time, and I'm using dragon hide. Dragon hide being in the special materials we're about to go over. Remember with shields, bucklers. Bucklers are probably what you're going to be using unless you are never going to need that offhand. And then if you have the ability, you're going to be using just a heavy steel shield. I don't see a lot of people that use tower shields specifically because of the armor check penalty and the max dex. Now, if you're running no dex character, you can use a tower shield. It can even grant you cover, which is great. I just don't see a lot of players that use them. So maybe the next full armored character I've got, I will use a tower shield. There's extras, shield bosses, and stuff. We're not going to worry about that, and we're not talking about armor spikes for any kind of offense to your defense. So now let's get into the fun part, special materials. There are a lot of players that do not look at this, or they've only heard of something, say like, oh, I don't know, mithril. Either you're a Tolkien fan or not. But if you're looking at armors, you need to also take this into account. The reasoning is, like I showed you before, and I told you about a character that took the Domaru armor, and then we had another character that used Kiko armor. Difference is, this armor is being used as leather or hide. This armor is being used as metal. And they were created at different levels. When my character had less money, but I wanted to get started into my Domaru armor, Domaru armor. And the reason is that character used dark leaf cloth. Flexible material, weaving leaves together, 10 strips from darkwood trees, treated, resulting in fabric. You can use this in place of leather armor. It is for light armor, some medium armor, and then clothing, of course. But the main reason I did it is because it decreases spell failure chance, decreased by 10%. Don't care about it. My character's not a caster, but increases the maximum bonus dex by 2, which is good, which took him up from doing his 4 up to a 6, probably about where this character is going to end, actually. Maybe 7. We'll find out. And took that armor check penalty down to 3. Now, the character that took the Kikyo didn't want to have an armor check penalty at all. She is the big roguey character. It's my wife. And so she always loves to have a character with no armor check penalty, because unless she has to buy celestial armor later on, she is going to try and get away, even take an AC hit, to not have any penalty because she loves her skills. But so I did that with this character. And so leather armor can be made out of dark leaf. It just have to mostly be made out of leather. So you're not going to be using this if a lot of the construction is made with leather. So that cuts out a lot of your other common stuff, but dark leaf is a great material to use. Another one that you'll see people use is going to be something like adamantine, especially if you do not have a way for damage reduction. I realize that it is only 3 damage reduction at, heavy armor, which is 15,000. It's a lot, but still 3 every single hit, especially if you're fighting a lot of opponents, that adds up. That changes you from getting hit 10 times and taking 100 points of damage down to, I don't know, 70. So it's good. It's a DR either way. It's fantastic. If you have no other way of getting DR, adamantine is a great way to look at it. Adamantine weapons are great because there are certain things that specifically are vulnerable, or you need adamantine to pass their damage reduction. But it's also just an old favorite. Came in from a lot of Forgotten Realms area, at least from my recollection. 3.5, we used it. Mithril is probably one of the most well-known ones, from Tolkien to everything. Mithril is a type of silver, and it, just like our little hobbit friend, will make everything he's got light. It's cheaper than adamantine, as you can see here. But what this is going to do specifically is it removes your armor check penalty by 3, kind of like what I just had, and your dexterity bonuses by 2, which is pretty much like the Dark Leaf armor, only this is for metal armor, so chainmail, plate mail, anything made out of mostly metal. That Kiko armor, whoops, that I showed you, which is mostly made out of metal. So it's a great thing to do. It just costs more than what my character had at the time, but we're up in higher levels, so she was able to do this. This decreases the weight by half, and that is really something. It also turns your armor to one size category lower. So you're treated as wearing heavy armors are treated as medium. Medium armors are treated by light. Light armors obviously are still light. So it's a way to get you into a weight category and a speed that you need, along with cutting the weight of your armor. Mithril is fantastic. Also, if you're going to be a caster, you need to grab a buckler. 1 AC. Okay. 1 check penalty. All right. Now you've got a buckler that is mithril with no arcane spell failure. You have no dexterity limit, your caster, whatever. You get the extra AC and you can enhance your shield. And since it's a buckler, it does not keep you from having something in your hand, a rod, a wand, whatever. You're going to be able to cast. You're never going to notice it. If you're playing a caster, you are going to do this. Now, my kineticist, or if you do not worry about a arcane spell failure and you want it a little bit cheaper, then do what I do. In my game, I am playing a kineticist, grabbed a buckler, which is 5 pounds, with 1 AC. Now I can enhance it, but since I don't want to take any check penalty, I used this. This is going to be Darkwood. If you don't normally get to use a shield, and you would like to add extra AC to your character, use a Darkwood buckler. Darkwood's going to cost you 10 gold per pound, so it's going to cost me 50 extra gold. Woo. And then, of course, masterwork and everything. But you have a masterwork version of the item. It costs you 10 extra gold for the Darkwood, and your armor check penalty is decreased by 2 of the ordinary shield, which means your buckler no longer does anything to your character. Now, this doesn't change the arcane penalty, but I'm playing a kineticist, so I don't care, which means I have an arcane spell failure, but it does not matter. So, since normally if you're wearing armor and you are not proficient in it, the armor check penalty, like that -6 or whatever, or that -10 for your tower shield, that is now put to your attack and everything. And so a lot of people will not use it because it's so detrimental to their character. That's why they take the feats for your armor proficiency. Well, if you don't want to do it and you're a kineticist or something that doesn't have an armor or an arcane spell failure, grab a Darkwood buckler and don't look back. Enhance it, you're fine. There is no armor check penalty. You won't take any decreases to your attack, so you're fine. It doesn't matter. It's what I did with this character, and has worked out pretty good. But you should always try and min-max your AC on your characters, especially if you're not one of the characters that gets access to things like full plate, or especially if you're not full dex, then you're going to need to increase that even more. Because if you're a frontliner and you're not able to get your protection, or even if you're a backline character, my character has good AC and he will continue to have good AC, and he's going to be a backline character. I mean, he's artillery. That's what he is. There are a lot of other good materials. Dragonhide is one of them. It's fairly thematic for, your dragon slayers and everything, but this can also be worn by druids. And so it's one of the ways that you can get around that non-metal thing with druids, and you don't have to worry about a penalty. A lot of players just like to have it because it's Dragonhide. You can add additional elemental protection to a suit of Dragonhide. One additional, or where is it? Oh, there you go. There is elemental protection a little bit. Dragonhide. So you can increase its ability if you want to add abilities to increase energy protection on this a little bit easier. But Most of my players don't use it. A lot of times they stick with mithril, but there is a lot of good materials that a lot of people don't use. You can be real thematic with bone, but for armor, it's kind of brittle, so I wouldn't always do it unless you can find a reason for it, or I don't know, maybe you're a druid and you think it's fun. But materials are great. Take a look at them, and maybe you'll find something you want. Remember, this is a material, so it's going to be what the item is made out of. Technically, you're not supposed to add this to your armor. Afterwards, it has to be part of the creation of the armor. As I've mentioned multiple times, Celestial armor is chainmail. It is technically +3 chainmail. And so instead of medium, it's light armor. Has a max dex bonus higher than normal, which is going to be a +8, which is ridiculous. You are going to have a -2 to your armor check, and still, like most armors, you're going to have that arcane spell failure. But it's a very popular armor for characters that are dex based. A lot of your dex finesse maguses are going to be using this. If you're starting off with enough gold, then this is probably what you're going to get in most cases, especially if you're hitting that +8 dex mark. It's just one of the best. Difference is when you're going to higher levels, some GMs are not going to let you enhance certain armors. Since I don't believe that celestial armor is going to be a one-of-a-kind thing or something, it's not an artifact, I allow my players to increase it, and most named armor just like normal armor. So they turn this into a +4/+5 celestial chainmail shirt. And one of the great things about it is if you don't have a character that can already do it, by the time you can afford this, then you can cast fly spell. But by this level, you should be carrying around potions. You should be having some way to do it. Potions, get enough money, buy you some wings or something. But talking about other effects, there are a ton of effects that we can add to our armor. Some of them, like Expedius, only cost gold, which means we can spend 4,000, and then or 3 times a day as a swift action, we get to add 10-foot bonus to all modes of movement for 1 round. Can be added to any kind of armor or shields. You'll have little caveats in there for these descriptions. It's great. You can add it. It's great if you're going to be charging, or if you're slow moving, you need a little bit of extra movement with it. You will see, like I said, some of them like Determination. Determination is amazing if you want to spend this much money on it. But this is going to give you Breath of Life. Breath of Life is going to, when you hit 0 or negative, you're going to have 5d8 points of damage plus 1 point per caster level. You and your GM, according to the armor, can decide when that takes effect, either if it's 1 or when it is completely done taking damage. Either way, it should be about the same thing, especially since Breath of Life can bring you back from the dead with the first round. So if you take enough damage to knock you to 0, this can bring you back. Also, if you take your negative in Constitution and you die, this will instantly be cast on your body. You will come back to life and you will stabilize, which means if you've got a high Constitution or if you roll really bad, because this is 10th caster level, which means this is +10, then you're going to come back to life and at least be stabilized. So if you've got a GM that's like me and we throw a lot of crit monsters at you or we hit really hard, then Determination is something you might want to throw on if you're thinking about being front lines, anything. Comfort's one of those that you're going to be looking at that sounds really good, probably not as necessary for everyone when it comes down to actual gameplay. It is probably something we would all use in real life. But if you look at the sheets here and all the different abilities that you can put on to your armor, there are a ton. Just like before, you need to evaluate if it's necessary. And also remember, anything that's going to increase your level of your armor, like mirrored, this not only does cost you money, but it's exponentially more. You have level +1 armor, now it's going to be level +2 to get you mirrored armor. If you have +5 armor, which is the max that can go to your actual armor class, then you now got +6 armor. Well, which things can get real expensive real quick. And so if you're going to add extra abilities to your armor, which doesn't happen as much in my games as with, say, weapons, because weapons, normally you're adding an extra 1d6 damage, fire, electricity, whatever. But if you're going to add that extra bonus and increase the enhancement level of your weapon, like I said, you can only add to +5 of actual AC to your shield or your armor, but you can go all the way up to level 10 in abilities. That means if you have a +1, which is the minimum you need to add any kind of ability to armor or to weapon, then you can have a +8 worth of enhancements. Things like mirrored. But mirrored is something that's good if you're going to have a lot of gaze attacks. It'll still allow you to have your sneak attacks and precision damage when they have concealment against them. It's a nice little trick. It's not used that much. I think we used it, or I used it, in one short game, a one shot that we played. But as you go through, you'll be able to look at the different armor bonuses on PFSRD or Nethys, and you'll see ways to give you increased in your stealth. These bonuses, competence bonuses usually, are going to be the same that you can get on different items, shoes. So make sure to not double up on the same bonus because they generally do not stack. But you do have some +3 bonuses, things like Ghost Touch, which your armor bonus counts towards. Corporeal. There's not as many enhancement bonus increases generally for armor and shields as there is for weapons. Weapons just got all the love, but that's okay. Pay attention to the material that you're using. Pay attention to the level and the ability your character has, not just now, but in several levels to come. Plan them out, and by using materials, by using all the options you have available to you, you can really enhance your character and pick up either lost abilities that increase skill bonuses, the ability to save your butt when you get yourself in a jam, or just that extra little AC bonus that you need to keep up with the bench press numbers. But remember, min-maxing's okay, and as long as your GM's fine with it, it's all good. We'll deal with it whenever we get to that point. Either way, enjoy your game this week, and let the dice roll.